my goodness. Well, where to begin? I mentioned during the weekend podcast and the weekend Patreon podcast. I do both of those on the weekend. They run about 20, 25 minutes now each. But I was talking about some of the bullshit that was flying around the country about the eclipse out of the mouths of the real lunatic escapees that are loose in our country, like Marjorie Greene and what's his name, the big fat bulbous bastard who has his show. Oh, what's his name? You know what I'm talking about. And just on and on. Crazy stuff. And so much of it had a very twisted, perverted, disgusting basis in religion. I mean, it's just... And I said during the weekend podcast, where do we live? Is this the 12th century? Is this the 9th century? Is this prehistoric times that some freak, the Q bitch who now squats inside of the U.S. Congress? I mean, you know who I'm talking about. She was able to pollute the airwaves with her garbage and social media with her garbage about it's time for this and it's time for that to happen and this has got to happen and it's a warning from God and so on and so forth. I mean, come on, okay? Come on. It's just insane. It's just insane. All right, so here we are. It's now about 12 minutes into the podcast, and I guess I have to start talking about, well, Trump. How's that? Oh, God. He is a week away from standing trial in Manhattan on criminal charges that he falsified records to cover up a sex scandal. And this is not a hush money trial. This is a criminal trial of election interference, which is a felony. And he has now said he plans to file a lawsuit against the judge overseeing the case. This is how insane topics of discussion here in the United States of America on this particular date have become. Court records now show that today, the orange bastard was filing an action against Juan Merchan, the judge overseeing this, an online court docket where Trump is expected to file the so-called Article 7-8 action, according to New York Times. That's a special proceeding that can be used to challenge New York state government agencies and judges. And in this particular filing, according to the Times, the paperwork was sealed. It's not immediately made public. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? According to the Times, two people with knowledge of the matter said that Trump's lawyers planned to file the action calling on an appeals court to delay the orange bastard's criminal trial and to challenge the gag order that Merchan recently put on this son of a bitch. Now, the attitude from people who understand the legal system and people who understand fully what the orange bastard has tried to do and continues to try to do and will always try to do, the attitude is that this is not going to work. It's just not going to happen. But it especially because it's so close to the trial. I mean, what? It's on the 15th, right? Next week, next Monday at this time, this rotten, rancid bastard will be in court. Now, the appeals court where this was filed, this action, this Article 78 action was filed, the appeals court in New York State might act real fast to reject it. And according to the Times, a single appeals court judge will most likely issue a preliminary ruling today, after it was filed, setting up a full 5-judge panel to consider the orange bastard's request in the coming days. Now, as far as the coming days, I mean, come on, we have 7 days. Well, actually 6 until this rancid, criminal, grifting son of a bitch is put on trial. And then in a separate filing with the appeals court on Monday, that's one thing that Trump knows how to do. File everything and anything. Delay, obfuscate, obscure, run, hide, dump things over, get everybody's attention focused over there instead of over here. But in a separate filing today, Trump asked the court to move the trial outside Manhattan. He said he can't get a he can't get a fair trial in Manhattan. Oh, really? And that's because of pretrial publicity? Oh, come on, you son of a bitch. It's not going to work. But on the other hand, I understand why the orange bastard is doing this. He's got to try every single thing to skate away from the law. This is Trump's entire life. He is one of the most adroit criminals that this country, political or otherwise, has ever created. Trump. Now, the orange bastard's toy lawyers have tried several times to delay this particular trial, the one in front of Judge Merchan. But this is their first attempt in an appeals court. Well, of course, wait till the last minute and then slam the court with documents that are just bullshit to begin with. Now, what he's trying to do is to push all 4 of his criminal cases, the 4 cases with 91 indictments. He wants to push them all past Election Day. That way, if he wins, everything goes away. Everything goes away because Trump then will use the insane powers of the presidency. How do we get to this point where a president of the United States has this kind of power? Well, I mean, obviously we all know how we got to this point. When the framers put this country together, at least the constitutionality of it, they never had a thought that somebody as foul and venal and corrupt and filthy as Trump would ever rise to the level of being even a candidate for the president, much less a former president. But anyway, the latest effort to stop the Manhattan case, it comes as Trump is, like I mentioned, also calling out for Judge Merchan to recuse himself from the case. So he's seeking a change of venue. He wants the judge to recuse himself, and he wants the gag order lifted, and he says he can't get a fair trial. Oh, Jesus Christ. Now, as far as Judge Merchan recusing himself, I mean, to me, this idea is the most insane because the orange thug and his toy lawyers argue that this judge has a conflict of interest. And the conflict of interest is the fact that the judge's daughter works at a Democratic consulting firm that worked on Joe Biden's campaign in 2020. Right? And of course, the orange bastard has repeatedly gone after the judge's daughter on social media and posted articles with her pictures and given all this personal information about her. In other words, the son of a bitch has tried to set her up to be beaten or killed. Just like a fucking mafia mobster head of a family, which is what Trump actually is. So last week, Judge Merchan expanded the gag order to bar the orange bastard from attacking the judge's daughter. I mean, do you think Ben Franklin or Alexander Hamilton or George Washington or any of those people would have thought a time would come when somebody like this filthy pig Donald Trump would go after and put in danger a judge's daughter when that judge was tasked with hearing criminal charges against the man trying to cause the judge's daughter to suffer some kind of tragedy. I mean, this has gotten so far beyond reason or rationality I mean, Trump has dragged all of us, this entire country, into this criminal enterprise that is his life. I guess you're aware of that. I mean, does a day go by? I ask this question innocently. Does a day go by when you don't either hear the word Trump or see something about this pig Trump, or have to listen to some argument about this monster Trump? A day, just one day. Do you have that experience? Maybe you do. Maybe it's just the nature of what I do with this podcast that prevents me from going through an entire day without hearing this grifter's name. But, you know, I just assume, and wrongly, I assume often that people who listen to this podcast are as immersed in this Trump crap as I am, which I hope for your sake is not the case. Now, the judge could rule on this request to recuse himself later on this week. And last year, the orange bastard tried to get him recused, and the judge told him to, take a walk. Of course not. He's likely to do the same this time. And according to the New York Times, in a response to Trump's most recent request, the prosecutors from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, that's who brought the charges against this orange son of a bitch to begin with, but those prosecutors wrote that Trump, quote, predominantly repeats the same arguments that he made in his first recusal motion more than 10 months ago, and that this court previously considered and rejected, end quote. And then the prosecutors added in their response to this request that the judge recuse himself, they added that the request was based, quote, on a daisy chain of innuendos. Quote, a daisy chain? How about a bullshit chain? I don't see any daisies here at all. It's just garbage out of this orange monster's mouth. Now, the district attorney's office, Alvin Bragg's office, was contacted by the New York Times for a comment about this. And, this last-minute effort of the orange bastard to make everything go away. And there was no comment on this appeal that was filed today. The district attorney's office, I would assume they're not even going to dignify this bullshit with a response. Now, lawsuits against judges, especially by someone going to appear before the judge, are unusual, I've read. But this is not the orange bastard's first try to use that particular tactic to delay a trial. According to the Times, last year he sued the New York judge presiding over a civil fraud trial. And that, of course, was an effort that the appeals court rejected. So the bullshit continues, and God, I hate to keep talking about it, and I appreciate the fact that you continue to tune in while we work through this era of Trump-dominated life for a lot of us in this country. I try to imagine what it would be like to never hear this son of a bitch's name ever again. I try to imagine the joy I will feel, and I will, if I outlive him, if this orange grifter steps off this mortal coil before I do. It will be a day, for me anyway, of great celebration. It really will. And I don't mean to come across as some kind of a ghoul or a vampire or somebody evil, but I have to tell you, that's how I feel. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy. 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.